Okay, hello, welcome. This is going to be my first guideline, I guess. So it's not technically a tutorial unless you're making it exactly like with the model I am using for this, or if you make it very similar. But for the most part, it's going to be more of like a guideline slash like template for you to use for yourself, whether you make a sweater for yourself or like your child or a friend or a teddy bear or whatever, or doll. So yeah, this is going to be more of a template, just to preface. I'm sure I put that in the title, but this isn't going to be a step-by-step tutorial for anyone who's looking for that. Now, also, this is going to be my first one, so it's not going to be perfect. This is definitely going to be a learning thing for me, so I might talk too much at certain parts or exclude certain things just by accident, because I'm going into this blindly. That's kind of how I roll. I just dive on in and think it's better than overthinking things, because I spend way too much time doing that as is. So I'm gonna start with like my materials, and then if you don't want to hear like, I guess, a little backstory of who I have modeling today, then you could probably skip ahead to two-ish, maybe 3 minutes. I don't know how long it'll take into the actual guidelines. So first, I have a skein of this yarn, which it doesn't matter. You can use whatever yarn you want. I have this because I bought 2 skeins, because according to the cover here, I needed 2 to make a baby sweater, and I think I used like half of the other one and finished it. So I don't know how big this baby is that they were needing 2 for. But yeah, I have extra, so I figured I would use it for the sweater I'm making. And then I have, for this one, now I think this recommends, they normally recommend on here the size hooks to use, but I generally, whether this is good or not, I go up. This is typically the smallest hook I like to use, which is the 525. It's just a preference thing. I don't like the size of the 375, which they recommend. It just cramps up my hand really bad. So this is typically the smallest hook I use. It's the most comfortable small size hook for me. And then the other 2 things, these obviously have been used quite a bit, but these are just like the cheap acrylic yarn that you can buy in like the thick skeins at like Walmart, Michael's, probably Joann's. I don't have one, but I'm sure you can buy it there. Like, these are like $3 for, I think, like over 300 yards, which is why I still have some. So I have red and green. For the strawberries, you could do pink and like a lighter green, but this is what I already have, and I'm trying to find ways to use it up, so that's why I'm using these. And then I have the little, I call this like a crochet needle. I don't know the proper name of it, but there's that for the embroidery part, and some scissors. Always need some scissors. So those are the utensils, the items I am using for this today. Now, if you want to jump ahead, if you don't care about who is getting the sweater, you can jump ahead for like kind of the guide. But my sweater companion today is Rilakkuma. So if you don't know what a Rilakkuma is, this is it. He doesn't come with the sweater. I did already make this one, and I am going to embroider this one. I'll probably do a video about like working on embroidery, because it's something I'm still working on, which is part of the reason why I'm doing this today. But he is from Japan. We won him at round 1. My boyfriend's son and I went. My son loves arcades, and he loves to win tickets, but typically he only wants like the candy and little things. So he had a ton of tickets left. I ended up picking him up because he was just so cute. He came in like a little sleeping bag, but he doesn't need it anymore because he has more clothes than my boyfriend jokes that he has. But he ended up sitting on my couch and kind of jumped around the house a little bit. But my dog passed away last year, and that's been really difficult on me. She was like my best friend, and she was always wherever I was. So it's been really difficult dealing with that. And a couple months ago, I put Rilakkuma on my couch, and he was one of the few things that really just day to day brought me joy. He sat on the couch that she used to sit on, and she would look out the window. And it was really hard to, one, look at the couch, and two, to even sit on the couch. And him, and we ended up getting the larger size as well of Rilakkuma, ended up making it a lot easier in the past few months since they've been moved onto the couch, and I've been putting time and effort into making them little sweaters and stuff. It's made like everything a lot easier on me, like emotionally, with dealing with that. So as silly as it is, even though I'm 28 years old, I love my Rilakkuma, and he is going to be the star of the show for quite a while until it's sweater season, or getting closer, probably around July, when I start making sweaters for myself, my son, and my boyfriend. He'll be probably the star of the show. That's why a lot of these, like this kind of stuff, will be like templates or like guidelines, because it's for Rilakkuma and not for me. And obviously any of this stuff you can take and make for yourself using like an actual pattern for a sweater, or if you have a Rilakkuma, a doll, or a teddy bear, Build-A-Bear, Jellycat, whatever, you could use this as a guideline to make your own, because I will talk about like sizing to fit him and everything. So now that that's done, I will go ahead and get into the actual guideline part. Okay, so a couple minor things I did not mention before was, one, that even though this is going to be like a guideline, this definitely isn't a tutorial, so I'm going to skip over like how to do a starting chain, how to do the half double crochet, all that kind of stuff. So if you're looking for that kind of stuff, this definitely isn't the video for you. I should have included that at the beginning. But yes, so we're going to start our starting chain here, and how I'm going to measure it is, if you're using someone like Rilakkuma or a teddy bear or a doll or something, these are really easy because depending on your yarn, so I have used this one before, this one stretches a little bit. That's important to keep in mind, is whether or not your yarn stretches while you use it. This stretches a little bit, so I will be going about to a seam, from one seam to the other seam. So I'm gonna go ahead and start on that, and I'll show you what I mean once I get it done. Alright, so for sizing reference, I can stretch it, which is about how much it'll probably stretch while I work, and it will go from the inside seam there to the inside seam here, which will probably be the perfect sweater for sizing for him. So if you are also using like a bear or a doll or a stuffed animal in general, and they have like an inside seam, or you can go like midway under the armpit here, that's kind of a good guide, as well as you want to kind of stretch it a little bit, because as you can see, this yarn has a lot of stretch, and it will stretch a little bit when you start doing the half double and stuff. So once you have your starting chain, you are, I'm gonna do half double, but you can technically do whatever, whatever stitch, there we go, whatever stitch you want to use. Half double just happens to be like my favorite. I like the height of it and everything. I'm gonna do the half double all the way up to about right under his armpit here. I'm not gonna go all the way up because I want to give myself room where I will be able to curve the stitch inward enough so I can add the sleeve. So I'm gonna, behind the scenes, do all the way up to about there with this, and then I'll come back in and talk about curving in. All right, so I have about 6 rows, so I have my starting chain and then about 6 rows. By the way, I realized afterwards that I didn't state this is for the front of the sweater. Of course, we are just doing like a template, so I guess there's that. So we're where it hits about where a sweater should on him, and we have about a finger length here. That gives us enough room. Where on the next one, we're gonna go over, instead of going to the very next like little hole here, we're gonna go over, get to about here. So we're gonna go over to the third one and go across and then stop early on the other side, so we can kind of get a little bit of a shape, like a shape around the sleeves. Typically, if you're making like an actual sweater for yourself, you make this part and then you make this part separately because you have a neck, but Rilakkuma does not have a neck. So that's why I do it this way. So if you're building a sweater for specifically Rilakkuma, this is the best way I found to do it. And then, so I'm gonna go ahead and do where I kind of go around the arm, and then at the very top, I'm gonna go over. So once I get to about here, I will come back and do the part where I go over a little bit to give you an idea of how to do that in specific, because typically on a regular sweater you would also do a neckline, but with Rilakkuma, once again, it is a little difficult to do a neckline because his arms just go straight into his head. So I found that kind of going across with your initial piece is a lot easier. So I'm gonna jump back off to try and keep this a little bit short, do that, and then I'll come back to do the neckline part. Okay, so I've basically finished the front part of the sweater. I've kind of followed the seam on both sides to create a fitted look here. Now I haven't tied off yet because since he has like really no shoulders or neck, what I do on both the front and back pieces is I kind of, oops, let me get the full thing here. There we go. So I kind of create a chain once this wants to cooperate. So I kind of create a chain that will be able to connect the sleeve to the top, because once I'm completely finished, I will go back through and do like a neckline, so to speak. But I do need kind of like a chain where the sleeve, when I make it, will be able to connect from front to back. Because if I don't, the last time I didn't do this to try and play around with it, I had to stitch the front and back together, and it kind of elongated the neckline a little too much for Rilakkuma and didn't turn out so great. So I think I did about 5 chains there, and that I'm gonna add 6. So I'm gonna add 1 more, and I kind of want it to go to this top shoulder seam right here. And then the front of the crochet sweater is done for now. Oh, also to mention, if you're doing this, do not tie it off, leave it as an open loop, set it aside, because this will definitely be handy when attaching the front and back together. All right, so I finished the back, which, oops, I almost pulled that through. And I chained 6, which I think is about the appropriate length, basically making a tank top to start. So if you want your Rilakkuma to have a tank top, then here we go. This is a good start for you. So we're gonna pull this because it looks a little short, but once we have it all like done up, all this will go away. And then we're gonna have this pulled back, and we're gonna do the opposite with the back here. And we're just going to connect the front and back. I just dropped the little piece I need. So I'm gonna take it off, and I'm gonna connect the front and back because it's pretty hard to do, and I'm actually going to use my hook for this one instead of that, and I'm just going to put the hook through, push through like a kind of like opening, and then just connect the two together pretty loosely like that. And then I'm going to do the same on this side. Gonna take my hook through the top here, find kind of a loose spot where I can push it through, make it, don't want to put it too far in here. There we go. And do the same over here. And once it wants to work with me there we go. Pull it all the way through and pull that through. So now we're loosely connected on the front and back via the shoulder sleeves here. And then the next task will be stitching up the sides. You could also set this down and do the sleeves next. I hate doing sleeves, so we're definitely gonna do this part next. So one way you can do this with is leaving your start end like long enough. Sorry, the table's shaking a little bit. I have my phone set up on the most ridiculous tripod that I could make up that worked. But it's better to leave your tail end a little longer to stitch up the side, but I did not do that. And I figured I'd not do that for the first video just to show another way you could do it. So basically I cut off like way too much yarn, because you might as well have more than less, because you can cut off at the end. I'm gonna weave it into my needle here, do it like very loosely tied off, and then I'm going to just go in from the sides. Now, typically if you were doing like a real sweater, you'd want to do it from the insides, but let's be real, it's for Rilakkuma. He does not care too much. As long as his sweater looks nice and is put together all the way, he is happy. So I try and weave the top ones, because that makes it easier for the knot here to go through. But if you were smart and thought ahead and kept your ends long enough, unlike I did, which I should have mentioned at the beginning, didn't even think about it, you can do a little bit of a thicker seam. But if you tied it off, I don't know if you can see my cat coming to say hi. Just go through the top layer here to kind of make it easier on your yarn to get through. And we're just gonna stitch up through this kind of rounded part where the armpit kind of comes together. So we're just gonna keep on going here, and I'm gonna go back and forth. I kind of mix it up how I do it. It really depends on like how the stitching ends up on the back. Sometimes I go like to one side, then back through that side, and then other times I loop around. I just kind of go with the flow, especially since it's for Rilakkuma. Like I said, he doesn't really care. All right, so I've stitched all the center. It's not perfect. I kind of like it to be like this, where it almost looks like it's a little bit more natural to the sweater, but we're gonna pull this tight. And then how I tie it off is I go back through the top. I create kind of like a circle with my hands and pull it all the way through. That knot's kind of in a bad spot. But I do that once through, and I'm gonna do it a second time because that knot got in the way, so it didn't end up so tight. So I'm gonna pull through there so I can kind of tighten that seam. And now this part is done, and I'm gonna do the same on the other side. All right, so we basically have him in a little tank top now because we do have to add sleeves. But as I was putting the sweater on him to just get a good idea of like fit, I noticed that the straps were too long. As you can see, he's got like this huge gaping hole. So I figured I would show how to fix that, like I did on this side. So I weaved the end of the strap back in here, and I'm gonna go about partway through the chain and then pull it through a hole over here. So hopefully, and of course it fell off my, see, the first time I did it on this side without filming, it went like so smoothly, and then now that I'm trying to film it, it doesn't want to work. Okay, So I pulled the chain through there. I still have this on my loop, and then I'm gonna pull it back around and then tie it into a little knot over there. And he still has gapping there, but it is at least going to be tighter like this side. So once the shirt goes, or the sleeves go on, you can see it has shrunk and it will be easier. And I will tie that a little better off camera because this side did not want to cooperate with me for the video. So when it comes to actually doing the sleeves, I do the chain, and then I measure off if the start of the chain and the end of my chain match, and then I go into it with the half double. And for Rilakkuma himself, the medium-sized Rilakkuma, here it's typically, depending on the yarn, about like 2 to 4 rows for a sleeve, because I like to leave his little yellow part of his paw out. I feel like that's more of his hand. So I will do that for both sides, then come back and show you how I attach it. All right, so I have both little sleeves here. I have the little sweater here. So since I did the seam for this on that side, and it's just for Rilakkuma, or if you're making this for a doll or a plush or whatever, you can just flip it inside out. Ta-da! The seams are now on the inside, and we want to do that before we attach the sleeves, because obviously these tiny sleeves don't work like that. And how I seamed these up was I left the starting chain a long line, and then I ended it with a long string. And I'm going to use those to weave this together, and I'm going to weave from the inside of the sweater. Just since this isn't like a actual pattern that I'm showing you guys, I will save some time on this already long video to do that on my own. And I'm also gonna weave it connecting this little nub where we fixed the top, so that can also be hidden. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And then when we get back, we can finally do the embroidery part, which is kind of like the fun part. All right, so the sweater itself is done. I do have like to weave in a couple ends, but because I flipped the seam that I did, one, it looks a little bit more natural than before, and two, it naturally hides any of the ends of the sweater, which is a very good thing to do. And then like I said, if you stitch the sleeves on from the inside, so basically it's not on Rilakkuma, but you hold it up and weave inward, you're able to kind of weave in all the ends, where especially on like a stuffed animal or a doll, you don't necessarily have to weave any of the ends in, because look, I haven't done it yet and they're kind of all hidden. So next we're gonna do the embroidery of the little strawberries. I'm only gonna do it on the front, but you could do it on the front, the back, the sleeves, whatever you want. So this is probably the part where people will tune in if they're just coming for a little bit of a guide on how to embroider some strawberries. First, I kind of like to make a plan. I know some people draw on their crochet. I don't trust myself enough to do that, so we're just gonna kind of eyeball it. I think I want to do 5 on the front, because I feel like 4 might make it a little too symmetrical, so I might do like 2 here, and 1 in the middle. I know that's still very symmetrical, but there's something about having like that extra in the middle that kind of evens it out. So I'm going to take it off Rilakkuma, and then we'll get into doing the actual embroidery. All right, so I have my sweater. I have my red, just like acrylic yarn, and I got probably about 3 feet of yarn because I rather have more than less. If I end up being able to use it for 2 strawberries, that's great. And then I'm going to weave it through here, pull it to the end, tie it off since I am doing embroidery, and then I'm going to find kind of the spot. So I'm going to visualize how, like where location wise. I might start actually here at the bottom. Gonna go through one of the holes here. So visualize it on, gonna go through this hole, gonna pull it through, and I'm not gonna pull all the way through here. I'm gonna leave some loose in the back. I don't wanna tie it off or anything yet either. And then I'm kinda gonna go based off how big I want these strawberries to be. So I'm gonna pull up here, make sure I don't tie that in, and just carefully pull it all the way through. So I have my first line, and this is gonna kind of be a guide of how big I wanna make it. And then to do this side, I'm gonna go through over here, and then I'm gonna go back down to the same hole. Now the thing with this is I don't wanna tangle up in my red yarn. I want to avoid that because that will mess with the embroidery itself. I've done that a bunch. And I've learned only the hard way not to do it. And also learn to not let your yarn get tangled while you're just doing this. All right, so I've kind of made my outline, and then I want to go through up here to make the rest of the outline. Once again, avoid tangling in our red yarn and pull it all the way through. So you have a little bit of an outline of a strawberry. If that's what you want to do, you can stop here and wait till I add the green, or you can keep going like I'm gonna do, and we're gonna slowly fill in all the red. Now I'm gonna go through at a different spot. Actually, I'm gonna use to start the same hole, pull, but see, I got the red tangled, so we're gonna have to start over right there, because no matter how hard you try, that still happens. So, gonna pull this through, and luckily, because we didn't tie off our yarn too, we can kind of pull that back into place. And then we're gonna go move our yarn over here. And acrylic, I find, can be a little difficult with this process of not tangling it up. It's almost as if it likes to get tangled in of itself. And then we're gonna pull all the way through. Oop, wrong string here. Pull it all the way through. I always forget it's backwards on the back. So we can fill it in, and then I'm gonna go over here, and I'm gonna get up. I hope I didn't pull that too far out of screen here. We're gonna get in there. I don't mind if a little white shows through on especially a strawberry, because, well, they have white seeds. Well, they're not really white, but a lot of times when they're portrayed, people portray them with white seeds. And so a little bit of white actually, in my opinion, isn't a bad thing. And we're gonna not go all the way through so we don't tangle our yarn here. Keep going. And we wanna make sure we're not pulling too tight. That's another thing I'm super guilty of, is pulling way too tight through every section, because that will kind of lump up your yarn, and it will also take away from your sweater. So we're just gonna keep going until all the red is filled in. All right, so I have my first little strawberry. As of right now, it kind of almost looks more like a rose possibly. So this could also work for that. Just change up where you do you could do a little green stem and make this a rose as well. So what I'm gonna do here is, since I've filled it in, I'm going to go to the back here. And at some point I had tangled this in here, but it's right, it's pretty secure in there. So if that happens, it's all in the back anyways. I'm just gonna tie these off together. This probably isn't the best way if you're making it for yourself. You'll probably want to tie this off and then weave them in as well, so there's not all this extra bulk. But since it's for Rilakkuma here, I'm gonna tie it off. He doesn't mind. And then I actually still have plenty of yarn left to make more strawberries, but just for the sake of the video, I am gonna switch over to green and do the little green top here. All right, so I pre-cut my green just like I did with my red, and I'm gonna start back here again, but this time I'm going to start up a little bit and go from here. So I'm gonna pull my yarn, once again, not all the way through, and I'm gonna do a little bit longer than that back there. And I'm going to weave through the top of the red to get a little start here. And now this can get a little more difficult to not tangle your yarn. As you saw, I even tangled my red yarn a little bit and had to just, oh, that almost looks like a little apple. That's cute. But I'm gonna do my best to keep an eye on the back and on the front here, and I'm gonna weave the green through to try and make it have kind of like a leafy appearance. It's getting stuck on my table even. So pull it all the way through like that. And it's okay if it's like not turning out right away, because that's why you just keep going. I kind of love embroidery for that reason, is it's never like done until you say it's done. So you can kind of play around with it a little bit. But I kind of have my guide here. I guess I could leave it like that. That's cute, where you're kind of looking at the top of it. So if that's, actually I might leave it like that. I kind of like that look. That's not what I was going for, but once again, that's kind of what's fun about embroidery, is that sometimes it comes out a little different than you were planning. It almost looks like a little tomato too, so if that's what you like, that would be cute too. But there we go. So I'm gonna, I guess maybe I'll do 3 or do like 4. I don't know how many I'm gonna do, but I'm gonna go off camera and do a few more just like that, and then we'll come back with the completely finished product. Okay, his sweater is officially complete. Like I said, they almost look like little tomatoes, but I kind of like that. That's pretty cute for him. So thanks for joining me along on this journey of crocheting a little strawberry embroidered sweater. This was my first crochet video, so like I said, it's not perfect. I am gonna call it a crochet with me because I don't think I included enough to make it like even necessarily like a guideline or a template. I'm almost worried because I don't know how ruthless the crochet community is to include like guide in the title of this or the description. So I have a wild hair here. But yeah, so if you guys also followed along with this, did any of this, I would love to know. Or if you guys enjoyed this, let me know. Obviously, I'm not going to keep this template. One, you could probably see the books at multiple times that I was balancing my phone on with like a car thing to hold my phone. That's not going to stay. I will get a like actual tripod to do these, as well as just use this kind of as a starting point. I already know plenty of things I want to fix and do better in the future for other videos, but yeah, I figured this was a good starting point. It was something I wanted to make for Rilakkuma, and he looks absolutely adorable in it. So yeah, if you guys liked this, if you used the embroidery detailings, or even if you made a little Rilakkuma / teddy bear / doll, whatever sweater, I really want to know. I would love to see it as well. So yeah, before I just ramble on and repeat myself 100 times, I hope you guys at least somewhat enjoyed this. If you have any nice, kind, constructive criticisms or things you felt I should have included, definitely let me know down below. If you watched it all the way through and you liked it, you could give this video a thumbs up. Just giving me a little bit of guidance whether or not people liked it. But I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Bye!